Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us here at the Center for American Progress for, as if we're having a think tank summit this afternoon. A couple of words about Vuk and this publication. Vuk Jeremic was the foreign minister of Serbia, and he's somebody with whom I've personally had a great deal of differences over the years. I mean, most prominently, he was Serbia's passionate advocate for why Kosovo should not be granted independence, while I and the United States were on the other side of that issue, and that actually embodies why it's so important to see what Vuk has gone on to do, because you have to remember that he was a founder of the Serbian resistance, that he was somebody that believed in a democratic future for Serbia and the rest of Eastern Europe, and for a future that was really based on integration, on how countries would work together. And when he finished up his tenure as foreign minister and ended his stint as the Secretary General of the UN General Assembly, he went home and he created something that was a little audacious. It was to say that Serbia is going to have this journal that is going to compete with the likes of Foreign Affairs. And what do you know? He actually did it. Many of you may know that Vuk is a candidate for UN Secretary General. He has been he's been a true a leader for his country, and I think provides a great example for how we should all embrace finding common solutions to the complex challenges we face today. So I'm very grateful that he's here, and I'm extraordinarily honored that we are going to kick off today with Senator Tom Daschle.
Let me welcome all of you as well. We have a standing room only crowd, literally, and I think it goes to the importance of the issue and the quality of the panel. And so I'm very pleased to be a part of it, and salute Nira in particular, our extraordinary leader here at CAP, for all the work she's done, not only in this, but so many of the things that CAP has done. We feel very proud of our affiliation of this organization, and I know many of you have followed with great interest and care as well. And Vuk, let me congratulate you. This was Vuk's idea many months ago, and like everything he does, this is done with quality and certainly with his passion. And as a result, I think it's going to be a very productive afternoon. So I'll start with the obvious. We live in a very historic and a transformational time. We're experiencing what I would consider a tectonic shift in the world order. The author and journalist, somebody that I'm sure you read as I do quite frequently, Tom Friedman, described the world recently as being redivided into a world of order and a world of disorder. And we don't have an answer yet for the people flocking from the world of disorder into the world of order.
It is a privilege, representing a very, small and a relatively new Serbian think tank to be working with a big Center for American Progress, and especially when it comes to issues like U.S. foreign policy, which is the main topic of our latest edition of the journal, that America is going to remain the world's main geopolitical actor for many more years to come. And as the presidential and other elections are moving to high gear, this is becoming a great topic for the whole world. In the words of also one of the Horizon Settlers who is not here, but was probably known to everybody, Itamar Rabinovich. We are experiencing the great unraveling of the order that was founded about 100 years ago, and evident geopolitical consequences for the U.S. As well as for the American allies throughout the world, and in particular in the region, are ongoing. So it's an enormously complex place, a place where the enemy of your enemy is not guaranteed to be your friend, actually to the opposite.
The United States needs to intensify its fight against ISIS. We are doing a number of things, as the President outlined in his most recent remarks, but it seems the case that the administration believes that time is on our side, and that if we only patiently pursue the course that we're on, then ISIS ultimately will be destroyed. And I don't think time is on our side. I think there's a premium on our ability to prevent ISIS from growing, shrinking its territory, and stopping, or at least significantly diminishing its ability to plan attacks in Iraq, Syria, and Libya that would be conducted elsewhere, including in the United States. And I don't think that that intensification requires the deployment of large-scale ground troops or an invasion of Syria or any of these kinds of things that no one seems to seriously be advocating, but rather a number of steps that could be taken that I think would make the fight more effective. So you could embed American advisors at the brigade or battalion level with Iraqi security forces in Iraq. You could pass weapons to the Kurds and the Sunnis by bypassing Baghdad in Iraq. You could explore the establishment of safe zones along the Turkish and or Jordanian borders in Syria. You could increase the number of special operations forces in Syria and allow them not only to advise troops on the ground, but also to conduct direct action against ISIS.
Thanks, first of all, for your leadership in putting together this journal, and thanks for putting the panel together, and thanks for coming back to Washington. So it's great to be back at CAP and with old colleagues and friends. What Russia wants, first and foremost, is to maintain its presence in the Middle East. It had a presence in the Middle East before. It had a naval base in Syria. It has now expanded its military presence by having its military forces in the thousands, including and particularly on the air. It's to maintain that capability. It wanted to be there and maintain it. For now, supporting Assad and his government is the means to that end. Assad is the one who invited him, Russia, to come in. It is, according to Russia, the legitimate government, or at least it is the government of Syria, and therefore supporting Assad's capacity to remain in power is the means to the end of staying in the Middle East. That's number one. Number two, in the longer term, I think the Russians recognize that the growth of ISIS poses a direct national security threat to Russia.
Isn't it interesting how Iran has kind of disappeared from the discussion? And that's partly because the debate about the Iranian nuclear deal was so intense and absorbed so much oxygen that once the deal was done, kind of people needed to move on. It's also a function of this transaction that has been done between President Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu, which is essentially Israel gets a new 10-year military assistance deal at higher levels, still to be negotiated, in return for backing off on the actual deal and no longer attacking it. So that also has helped to lower the temperature. But what I think that disguises is the fact that Iran hasn't changed its regional policies. What's happened is that the nuclear issue has, for the time being, off the radar screen. I hope that's turns out to be for 15 years. We're going to have to be very, very vigilant about Iranian compliance with the agreement. But it does reinforce a point that I think President Obama made throughout this debate about the Iranian deal, which is that, you know, because there's so much else going on in the region, so much turmoil and so much descent into chaos, as Senator Daschle was explaining, taking the potential for a nuclear arms race in the Middle East off the table just makes it somewhat easier to deal with those other issues and to focus on those other issues.
Issues around Syria have only grown in importance because the issue of Syria itself is expanding from Syria through the refugee crisis into Europe and ultimately into conversations in the United States. Issues in the Middle East around ISIS and its power are bifurcating from territory issues to terrorism, which is definitely affected Europe through the Paris attacks and is evidenced in some indirect, it seems at this point, way in the San Bernardino attacks. So, I think the Middle East is more and more on the minds of Americans, but I think my own view is that how we respond to these issues are deeply affected by economics within the United States. And what I mean by that is, if you can look at the country today in the United States, look at both political parties, and they are, I believe, both responding to issues around 15 years of wage stagnation in the United States. So Democrats in the United States are increasingly focused on inequality, wage stagnation, issues around fairness in the economy, more so than at any period of the last 20 years. And on the Republican Party, I think you can even look at the rhetoric of the last few days and see that there is a deep anxiety about people who are different. So over the summer it was immigration, but the collision of these issues between the Middle East, terrorism, and the Republican debate is what we're seeing with these virulent, disgusting, in my view, attacks on Muslims in the United States and around the world, which have the effect of actually helping ISIS's strategy, but let's put that aside.
Well, thank you very much. They say that a really good quality discussion about the Middle East has to leave you more confused than at the beginning, and that certainly is the case with me. So I want to.
How about more depressed?
More depressed for sure. In my case, more confused as well. I want to thank everybody, and I want to thank you for joining us. It's been an excellent discussion. It's been a great privilege to work with a Center for American Progress and to work with all of you guys. And I hope that we'll be seeing more of each other in the future. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for coming, and join me in thanking our panelists.
No, that's great.